Now, the Three Martini Lunch with Greg Corombos and Jim Geraghty.
And welcome, everyone, to the Tuesday edition of the Three Martini Lunch. Yes, I'm still under the weather, but Jim Geraghty is back, so that's good news. Jim, I don't know if you served jury duty or escaped jury duty, but either way, congratulations. It's good to have you back.
Yeah, Greg, I just ran in chanting guilty, 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 and surprisingly enough, they didn't select me. I am so really sorry to hear that you're under the weather, though. You sound rougher than the Lions after they finished with the Bears the other day.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, the Bears are rolling 8-3, so we'll see if we can keep it going. But we want to let you know today we're sponsored by Hopsy. We talked about it last week during our special gifts. I gave it to Brett Kavanaugh. Jim has been able to try out Hopsy, and he'll be able to tell you all about it and why it's a great gift for someone in your life, if not yourself, in just a moment. But let's go to the first of our three crazy martinis today. That's right, all crazy. You may have heard that Bob Mueller has scrapped the plea deal with former Trump campaign manager Paul Manafort, and we might be starting to learn why, although WikiLeaks is strongly denying this report. This is from the UK Guardian. Trump's former campaign manager, Paul Manafort, held secret talks with Julian Assange inside the Ecuadorian embassy in London and visited around the time he joined Trump's campaign, the Guardian has been told. Sources say Manafort went to see Assange in 2013, 2015, and in the spring of 2016, during the period when he was made a key figure in Trump's push for the White House. It's unclear why Manafort wanted to see Assange and what was discussed, but the last meeting is likely to come under scrutiny and could interest Bob Mueller, the special prosecutor investigating alleged collusion between the Trump campaign and Russia. So, Jim, we're expecting a Mueller report, some subsequent indictments here before too long. Manafort was the guy he really wanted to use as an asset here, and it looked like he had that with the plea deal, and now that's blown up in smoke. And how do you read all that along with the story?
This is potentially a very big deal, Greg. Now, one way or another, somebody's lying. And boy, oh boy, you give me a choice of who do you trust less, Paul Manafort or Julian Assange? Greg, I just stare in utter indecision for a long period because I don't really trust either one of these guys. If the claim in The Guardian is true, then all of a sudden, the argument of collusion between the Russian government or entities connected to the Russian government and the Trump campaign doesn't seem so wildly far-fetched. Then what got discussed in that last meeting becomes really important. And you could see this opening up a whole new can of worms and a whole new area of investigation for the direction, because up until now, we really haven't seen anything. We knew that, Manafort had his past connections and he was tied to a pro-Putin politician in Ukraine in past years and things like that. The argument about whether the language in the GOP platform had been changed, but there really hadn't been anything resembling a smoking gun, anything that said, aha, here is where the Trump campaign and the Russian government were deciding to work together against the Hillary campaign. Now, all of a sudden, with this meeting, this would change. Now, Assange, for what it's worth, says, look, I bet you $1 million that this didn't happen. I don't know if this means that he's got $1 million and he's willing to lose or whether they really have something wrong here. One thing I would note, and it just kind of strikes me as really odd about this, Greg, is that so we're about 2.5 years into this story, and all of a sudden we're hearing about this meeting. I mean, that seems like you just figure this would be one of the first things that would leak about this. And the other thing is that a meeting inside another embassy is not an easy thing to hide. I'm sure the embassy probably keeps records, security tapes. It's not a particularly private place for a meeting for something like that if you're going to collude with the foreign government. If this actually comes to pass, Greg, Manafort will end up being not the sharpest knife in the drawer, but really one of the all-time just idiots to do something like this. The idea that this would not get caught in one form or another by American intelligence or some other foreign intelligence is just baffling. Although, again, the idea has everybody been sitting on this information for the better part of 2 years? Just a little odd. The idea that, that years and years later, The Guardian would come up with this is kind of surprising. Perhaps The Guardian's source is making it up, which is not unthinkable. Definitely worth watching, and just an utterly bizarre. You think you know how this story is going to go. There's always a possibility of some other giant curveball before it ends.
Wow. Makes you want to drink.
Ha! Yes, and then we'll get to Hopsy. Now, folks, we've had many fine sponsors here at the Three Martini Lunch podcast, and we like all of them. But man, oh man, Hopsy is the sponsor I've been looking for. My personal testimony I'll give you in a second, but first, things they want me to say. Everybody knows the only way to get beer at its best is straight from the tap. Hopsy brings beer on tap to the comfort of your own home without the price tag many beer drinkers have come to expect. You can have your own beer bar at home with the Sub, a countertop appliance that fits neatly in your kitchen, bar, or living room. Think of Hopsy as the Nespresso for beer, or like a Keurig, except it's, beer. Whether you're a hop head, a malt mouth, or a palate partier, you can enjoy a variety of beer styles from big and small breweries, which rotates monthly. The IPAs are very popular. Hopsy partners with a long list of breweries and ships mini kegs to your home and office. Now, Greg, have you ever been to I know your voice isn't in great shape, so just grunt once for yes or grunt twice for no. Have you ever rented a keg for a party?
No.
Okay. I have not done it myself either. Everybody I know who's done it says it's really fun at the party. You got a keg, that's great. But it's an absolute pain in the neck both before the party and after the party. They're expensive, they're big, they're heavy. A lot of people aren't really familiar with how it kind of works. You end up with cups that are like, 90% foamy head and about 10% beer. It's a really wonderful idea in theory, but it very rarely works out the way people picture. You don't have this problem with Hopsy. We had this thing out of the box and running and chilling the beer within a matter of minutes. They say, look, if you want it, they say give it 7 hours. So you want to do this a little bit before you have people over. But really, you can have it pretty much almost as straight, depending on how, if you're British and you like it room temperature, that's fine. This is the kind of product, you get it, you take it out of the box, and you're just going to want to have people over. I've had both the porter and the stout, liked them both. I think I like the stout more than the porter. Very easy to handle. You just, figure out, hold the cup at a 45-degree angle, and you pull it down fast, and you generally don't get too much of that foamy head there. This is undoubtedly, I'm sure in a position he can't officially endorse, but let's just say this is a Brett Kavanaugh product if there ever was one. This was a lot of fun. I had people over. They all thought it was neat. It really isn't that big. They send you something in basically about 2-liter bottle type. You put it into this kind of cylindrical tube that chills it and gets it properly pressurized to come out of the tap, and it really does taste terrific. So let me just say, I really like it. I can wholeheartedly endorse it. Not only did they send me some to try, I've just this morning ordered some more for our party coming up for the holidays in a couple of weeks. So to get the Sub home draft machine, 2 mini kegs of beer, which is the kind of the equivalent of about 2 6-packs, 2 Hopsy glasses, and a free membership in the monthly beer club for $99, go to tryhopsy.com/martini and use the promo code Martini. Now, terms and conditions apply, but it's spelled tryhopsy.com/martini. Promotional code Martini. Go check out Hopsy right now.
Second crazy martini now. This was Beto O'Rourke all the way back in, let me check my notes, earlier this month on 60 Minutes, just before the midterm elections.
What are your thoughts on running for president?
I don't want to do it. I will not do it. Amy and I are raising an 11-year-old, a 10-year-old, and a 7-year-old. And we've spent the better part of the last 2 years not with each other, missing birthdays and anniversaries and time together. And our family could not survive more of that. We need to be together.
Is that reversible? You're saying you'll never run for president?
I'm saying that if elected to the Senate, I'll serve every day of that 6-year term. That I'm not looking at 2020, and in fact, I'm completely ruling that out. Not going to do that.
No matter what, win or lose, you're not going to run in 2020.
Win or lose, I'm not running in 2020. I got to tell you, it's incredibly flattering that anyone would ask me the question, or that's even up for discussion. But since people have asked, the answer is no.
So Jimmy says he was answering that question in the context of expecting to win the Senate race and that he'd be serving there for the next 6 years, in which case he wouldn't run for president in 2020. Quote, now that is no longer possible, we're thinking through a number of things. When asked if that means his opinion has officially changed from before the election, quote, yeah, it is, meaning it's different. So big surprise here, right?
I suppose I should salute the honesty in the second statement, not the first one. Because based on everything he said in the first statement, an entire, 3 weeks ago, Greg? 4 weeks? I guess the tone is now, screw my kids. They can handle being on the campaign trail for the next 2 years. Hope you like Iowa and New Hampshire, kiddos, because, we're dragging you out of school. Get ready. Oh, you're going to be at a lot of Rotary luncheons over the next 2 years, kiddos. This isn't exactly a shock. I think what's kind of fascinating about this is the emphatic, like it wasn't just a matter of I don't plan on running for president in 2020. I'm focused on running for Senate. The usual line. And Beto O'Rourke goes that extra mile, that extra, is there such a thing as phony authenticity, Greg? Let's just say attempted authenticity. Oh, I couldn't do that to my family. They've made such sacrifices. Oh, I just don't want to do it. And then, of course, never mind. Oh, no, I'm totally running. Okay, he's not totally running. But and by the way, I actually think that he not only is he likely to run, there's a certain argument that would say he'd be foolish not to run. Strike while the iron is hot. He is probably one of the most intriguing figures in the Democratic field. A lot of Democrats were impressed with him. Let's face it, coming within 3 points of Ted Cruz in Texas, probably the best performance of a Democrat in Texas in about a generation. That's nothing to sneeze at. That's, Texas Democrats are thrilled that they won two U.S. Congress seats, about a dozen state House seats, 2 state Senate seats, and a whole bunch of judgeships. He led his state party to a pretty good year. And, if you're him, be vanilla Obama, right? Go out there and enjoy the media adulation. People might genuinely wonder, hey, we gave you $75 million and you didn't win. And you had, probably better publicity than Jesus. And that's the sort of thing that, we had reason to expect turned into a victory. But look, if you're him, the odds that you're going to be more liked and more in better shape 6 years from now are not likely. Go for it while you can. It's a big crowded field. And the guy who thinks he could, win a red state or two and undoubtedly has charisma and is good on the stump and all that stuff. The Ted Cruz campaign came out and said, look, this is not a guy to underestimate. I pity the Democrats that are going to take on this guy someday. And that someday could be a heck of a lot closer than we think. So it's not surprising. This, however, will probably get thrown at him quite a bit once he officially announces. And he should be, because there's nothing wrong with changing your mind. But when you seem really, really emphatic about it, and then you reverse it with within 3 weeks, it's kind of glaring that you didn't really mean it in the first place.
So, Jim, if he does run, does the media embrace him like it embraced Obama in 2008 and kick Joe Biden, who will now have the Hillary Clinton roll to the curb?
It'd be interesting to see if the love affair between the media and Beto continues. My guess is mostly it will. But I wonder if there are some, folks in the left of center media who will say, well, wait a second. This guy had every conceivable advantage against Ted Cruz, and he did a good job, but in the end, he didn't win. Democrats were undoubtedly shocked by losing to Trump, and you don't have to dig too deep to sense they are afraid of losing in 2020. So they're probably going to overthink this, but undoubtedly, obviously he's young, the beautiful family. Because he's not going to the Senate, he's something of an outsider, I guess you could say, although he spent 6 years in Congress. It's not quite clear. He can stand out amongst a whole bunch of people who are really, really progressive. The perception that he's centrist. Now, you and I discussed a lot of times during the campaign, Greg, he's not that centrist. But because he's from Texas, people sense that he is. People also believe that he's Hispanic. He's not. They believe that he's a veteran. He's not. It'll be interesting to see what this guy gets into once he's actually in the 2020 campaign trail. And the other thing is, what do other Democrats go after against Beto O'Rourke? But I think it makes it interesting to see, and I think he's a more fascinating option than, say, Cory Booker or something like that. So,
wow.
Or sorry, Spartacus.
So we could have the winning by losing ticket of Beto O'Rourke and Stacey Abrams, is what you're saying here.
What a team! What a team! O'Rourke Abrams, close but no cigar.
All right, let's move to the final crazy martini now, and it starts with the bad news that GM is going to get rid of about 15% of its salaried employees. They're going to shutter 5 different plants, a couple in Michigan, Ohio, even one near D.C., just outside of Baltimore, Maryland. President Trump obviously not happy about these blue-collar jobs going away. Here's what he had to say on the White House lawn before he went off to Mississippi yesterday.
Well, we don't like it. I believe they'll be opening up something else. And I was very tough. I spoke with her when I heard they were closing. And I said, this country's done a lot for General Motors. You better get back in there soon. That's Ohio. And you better get back in there soon. So we have a lot of pressure on them. You have senators. You have a lot of other people. A lot of pressure. They say the Chevy Cruze is not selling well. I say, well, then get a car that is selling well and put it back in. So I think you're going to see something else happen there, but I'm not happy about it.
So Ted Cruz doing better than the Chevy Cruze. Jim, basically what's happening here is that these are plants specifically to build sedans, and they aren't selling anymore. So I don't know if it's too difficult to retrofit them to make SUVs or what have you, but what do you make of the president making demands of GM, and what do you think is ultimately going to happen here?
You know, what you just mentioned there, Greg, I wouldn't realize that out of Ted, Tom, and Chevy that the senator would have the best year in 2018. So let me say, here's my fear. First of all, a whole bunch of people kind of, GM was a major animating issue on the right. We didn't like the bailouts. We didn't like government motors. Government lost about a little more than $11 billion on the deal. This used to really get the blood pumping on the right. By golly, government's not supposed to pick winners and losers. Yes, it was terrible that GM had basically brought itself to the brink of bankruptcy, but the government is not supposed to own a car company. It's not supposed to bail out every big industry that finds itself in trouble. And then they kind of faded away, even after, Greg, it turned out that GM had been making cars that will kill you if your keychain is too heavy. The whole issue with the electronic switches back in 2014. People forget Mary Barra was, mocked on Saturday Night Live for her congressional testimony. She said even though she was in the engineering department, she'd never heard about any of this stuff. GM was really in trouble for a while there. And then we all just kind of forgot about it. Eventually it got back to profitability. The cars stopped killing people. And Mary Barra was even on Trump's, I believe, his council of advisors of chief executive officers early in his administration. I don't know how much that council really met or how much influence they have over policy, but this was a woman who Obama had praised during the State of the Union, brought her to attend, had her stand up, and everybody applauded. It was GM was this great success story. And now it turns out there are a bunch of cars that aren't being made. Now, you could say, oh, this is GM being proactive and focusing on the future and recognizing, look, some of these cars we're making just aren't selling the way we want them to. They don't have a long-term future. It's time to cut our losses and focus on apparently self-driving cars and other electric cars and things that are more eco-friendly. Maybe that's the business right call, but that's going to end up with shutting down 4 plants, some of them in Michigan and Ohio. And gee, those aren't really important states in 2020. No, are they, Greg? So what has me worried is you have Democrats who hate layoffs. Everybody hates layoffs, but Democrats really hate to see the United Auto Workers suffer. And President Trump hates to see it because he wants to see nothing but good times under his administration. I kind of wonder if at some point you'll start seeing proposals for government motors 2.0, some sort of tax break, some sort of subsidy, something in order to save the Chevy Cruze. And oh, by the way, hey, Greg, remember the Chevy Volt?
Oh, yeah.
I mean, it was the future of the company. That was going to say, lo and behold, people are not buying the Chevy Volt, but they're also not buying the Cruze and a whole bunch of other cars that are a part of the line. General Motors is concluding that there's no future for these particular chains, and this is going to hurt people. And I said in Ohio and Michigan, also I believe one plant outside of Baltimore, Maryland. My fear is you will see, Trump certainly doesn't mind corporations and business getting in bed together. And I think Democrats certainly don't mind as long as it helps their union allies. I think we could very well see some proposals for a corporatist deal. I'd like to think Republicans in Congress would oppose that, but they don't have control of the House anymore. And it's interesting to see how much leverage they have. So keep a close eye on this. I don't like the layoffs, but this may be just a reaction to natural consumer choices. And really unavoidable. Now, maybe they can make some of their newer cars in these plants. It would take time, I assume, to retrofit the plants and instruct the workers in the new ways and stuff like that. We'll see how this shakes out. But having been down this road before, kind of like that old joke about the gentleman and the lady, we've already established what kind of woman you are. Now we're negotiating about the prices. Look, we've already established the relationship between the American government and GM. Now we're just haggling over the price.
Do not want to go down that road again. Jim, good to be with you as always. Talk to you tomorrow.
Feel better, Greg. See you tomorrow.
Thank you, sir. Jim Geraghty of National Review. I'm Greg Corombos of Radio America. Don't forget to try our great new sponsor, Hopsy. That's tryhopsy.com/martini and use the promo code martini. And tune in again Wednesday for the next 3 Martini Lunch.